Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 289, All Things Bright and Beautifly. The episode begins with Ash and the gang still making their way to Rustboro City, with Max finally able to use the Pokénav again to help direct them there since they were no longer in the forest. Eventually, Max assured everyone that according to his Pokénav, they weren't far from Rustboro City, and they then reached the end of a hill that had a beautiful field with a building in the middle on the other side, with the field having plenty of roses. Seeing a building, Ash assumes that this likely meant that they were in Rustboro City, and declared that that building must have been the gym, and he was going to head straight for it, pumped for his first Hoenn gym battle. However, Max corrected Ash, stating that they were not in Rustboro City yet. When he said that they were close, he meant that they were only a day away, and required passing through the field. Ash fell over in sadness, hoping he had finally reached the gym, only to ask what the fuck the building in the middle of the field was, leading Max to confirm that according to his Pokénav, the building was known as Rustboro Hall, a site for Pokemon contests. Ash didn't know what the fuck Pokemon contests were, so when they walked up to the building and saw several trainers by it, with one of them brushing his Persian, another dousing her Flaffy with water to cool it off, and another one training with his Slugma, though not battling, Ash questioned why none of the Pokemon were battling, since he didn't know what a Pokemon contest was, so he figured that it would obviously have something to do with battling, believing that that's what any Pokemon competition involved. Max informed them, though, that a contest did not involve battling whatsoever, and told Ash to get more information by looking at the sign on the building, which had Pokemon contest in huge writing, and a lot of the rules written underneath. May didn't know what a Pokemon contest was either, and she was excited to finally not know something that Ash also didn't know, and began to read the sign, wanting to have some knowledge over Ash for once, and also just because she genuinely wanted to know what a contest entailed, when suddenly she was startled as a Pokemon hits her in the face and knocks her down to the ground. The Beautyfly stays on her face as May gets up from the ground, screaming for the thing to get off in fear, and this causes the Pokemon to fly up, although it merely just lands on May's head as opposed to her face. But Ash was still able to scan his Pokedex with it at this point, allowing him to find out that there was a Pokemon called Beautyfly, which he had spotted during his travels in Hoenn earlier. Actually, it was like, 2 episodes ago at this point? As May screamed her head off still, trying to shake the Beautyfly off of her, Ash just laughed at May's misery, joking that she's made a new friend. Just then, a dude named Chaz with his Venomoth and a girl named Janet come running up to Ash and the gang, with Janet trying to apologize, insinuating that this Beautyfly must have been hers, but as Janet tried to apologize, she was cut off by Brock being attracted to Janet, trying to flirt with her, as usual, complimenting Janet's beauty. However, finding Brock annoying for doing this, the Beautyfly, confirming itself as Janet's, flies off of May's head and goes straight for Brock, smashing itself onto him and knocking him down to the ground, particularly injuring Brock's head because that's where the Beautyfly had landed, much like how it landed on May's head. Upon seeing this, Janet finally was able to apologize, both for her Beautyfly landing on May's head and for landing on Brock's head, pleading with her Beautyfly not to do that shit anymore. Max, seeing how Janet and Chaz were around all these other trainers that seemed to be preparing for the Pokemon contest, asked if they were practicing for the contest as well. Janet admits that she was in fact practicing, but she also clarifies that the practicing wasn't going too well, as her Beautyfly had got scared off due to not being able to defend itself using its attacks properly, and because Chaz, who was also entering the contest with his Venomoth, used a whirlwind that was way too strong for her Beautyfly to handle, so all of that caused the Beautyfly to go away in fear. Chaz admitted that his Venomoth's whirlwind was too strong, but it's not like he was pleased about that, as since he wasn't battling but rather in a Pokemon contest, he explained that the whirlwind being too strong actually wasn't super good. Ash was speechless upon hearing this, so with no one talking, Janet and Chaz took the opportunity to introduce themselves officially. However, Ash was able to recover from his speechlessness as he questioned why a powerful attack was deemed a failure by Chaz, leading Chaz to explain that in Pokemon contests, the power of attacks do not matter whatsoever and could actually end up being a detriment. Ash proceeded to make fun of Pokemon contests then, stating that could it really have been a true Pokemon contest, like a competition in any way, if a Pokemon's strength didn't matter? But Janet confirmed that the attacks definitely didn't need to be powerful in a Pokemon contest. What they needed to be was beautiful, explaining that people who participated in Pokemon contests were known as Pokemon coordinators, and they trained their Pokemon not to make their attacks stronger, but to make their attacks more visually appealing, so that they could impress the audience and judges with how cool the attacks looked. Ash still believed that a Pokemon competition that didn't involve battling or attacking at all was somewhat weird, but upon hearing the description of a Pokemon contest, May had recalled hearing about one before. And her favorite thing that she remembered about contests was that the winner of the contest would be awarded a beautiful ribbon, and asked if this was true, which Janet and Chaz confirmed by showing May their ribbons that they have won, with Janet having won too, and further stated that the ribbons were to go inside a nice case for safekeeping. Being absolutely amazed by the beauty of these ribbons, May declared that she wanted to enter a Pokemon contest as well, though Max reminded her that she would have to be well bonded with her Pokemon first so that they could do some good-looking moves together. May simply ignored Max, though, being too excited, as she decided that she was officially going to participate. Ash and Brock, although they were confused by there being another form of contest that didn't involve battling, were intrigued by the prospect and decided to join May and register for the contest as well, as the three of them requested Chaz and Janet to take them to Rustboro Hall, which was the building that they had spotted when they first came into the field. So with that, they went over to the building. However, Jesse, James, and Meowth were already in the building, talking to the entry receptionist. Why were they talking to the receptionist, you may ask? Well, apparently, Jessie had a Pokemon contest pass, meaning that she must have entered a contest before. So, when she had heard about the contest at Rustboro Hall, she of course wanted to enter, and handed the receptionist her contest pass. Very, very excited to participate. However, much to Jessie's dismay, the receptionist informed her that not only was the contest already full of entrants, but the contest pass had also expired, since Jessie hadn't used it in so long. James, not really interested in watching Jessie do a Pokemon contest anyways, simply suggested that they try again next year to get in when there was a spot open. But this just made Jessie more angry as she yelled at James, and the receptionist was so uncomfortable at this that she claimed that she could find a way to squeeze Jessie into the contest and also renew her expired pass, making Jessie extremely happy, exclaiming her happiness. As Jessie then went into the actual contest hall, it was then that Ash and the gang arrived at the receptionist's desk with Janet and Chaz. Ash, May, and Brock all begged to be let into the contest, only for the receptionist to confirm that there was officially no more spots. May, still being adamant about joining, begs again, but she's denied once again, making her extremely depressed. The receptionist tries to cheer May, Brock, and Ash up, though, by giving them, as well as Max, contest viewing passes, so they could at least watch the contest. However, this didn't cheer May up at all, as she really wanted to participate in the contest, and she just got more pissed off as the Beautyfly tried to comfort her itself by landing on her head, which she obviously didn't like. While May, Max, and Brock were waiting for the contest to begin outside, Janet had stayed inside, as she knew that May would be disappointed, and she came up with the idea to ask the receptionist if there was still room for assistants to join, which the receptionist confirmed. And Janet then asked if she could make May, as well as Max, her assistants, and the receptionist confirmed this as well. As Janet went outside to go inform May of the great news that she could still assist her in the contest, Max had just so happened to suggest that May request Janet, or Chaz, to become her assistant, knowing that was possible after reading the contest rules. May initially didn't like this idea, as she wanted to be the star of the show, not a mere assistant. But Max told her that she should just be happy to be involved in a contest whatsoever, stating that she could at least get practice for when she could eventually enter, and this led May to actually like this idea now. So, when Janet came up to her and told her that she had officially made her assistant, May was overjoyed. Especially when Janet clarified that assistants were allowed to come up on stage as well and actually interact with the Pokemon. So, May would still get to be in front of the crowd. She wouldn't just be a behind-the-scenes person like she thought she would be. So this made her even more pleased. Meanwhile, Brock was outside as well, and he was by Chaz, and he noticed that Chaz was feeding his Venomoth, and asked what Chaz was feeding it. Chaz responded by handing Brock what he was feeding the Venomoth, which Brock recognized as Pokeblocks, which were made by mixing berries, and were supposed to really improve a Pokemon's skill. Chaz confirmed this, adding that coordinators used Pokeblocks to keep their Pokemon looking beautiful, and their attacks looking beautiful, as that was one of the effects the berries had on them. Chaz then admits that he made his own recipe of Pokeblocks to make his Pokemon's attacks look more beautiful than ever. Brock was intrigued by the prospect of a unique recipe that was custom, so he decided to try the Pokeblock that he had been given by Chaz, revealing to him that he was particularly interested in the Pokeblocks because he made his own Pokemon food, and he wanted to see how they compared. Max, May, Janet, and Ash had walked up, overhearing all this, and admits that it wasn't just Chaz who used Pokeblocks, but she did as well, specifically on her Beautyfly. This makes Max realize why Beautyfly's wings were so beautiful. And Brock commented Chaz's Venomoth's beauty as well, leaving Janet and Chaz to thank Brock and Max for the compliments, stating that they really appreciated them since they had put a lot of effort into the beautification, stating that it was not easy. The Beautyfly appreciated Max's compliment as well, as it began flying around Max as well as May. It eventually does multiple 360s around both of them, leading Max to question if that was an attack of Beautyfly's, which Janet confirms, stating that it was an attack known as Morning Sun. And May thought that this attack was really beautiful, and was actually beginning to appreciate Beautyfly, even as it landed on her head once again. Man, that's character growth already. Ash and the gang, as well as Janet and Chaz, then began waiting for the contest to begin, and they got bored, so Chaz made some small talk, asking if Ash knew about the Rustboro City Gym, in the very close by Rustboro City, and asked if he or May had plans to challenge it, with both of them confirming, admitting that that's where they were originally heading off to, before getting distracted by the Rustboro Hall, and Ash also admits that he was planning on using Pikachu. This led Chaz and Janet to state their concern for Ash, insinuating that he would likely have a hard time in the gym with his Pikachu. Ash questioned why this was, leading Chaz to inform Ash that the gym leader of Rustboro City was a rock-type specialist, meaning that Pikachu's electricity would not do very much. Max, knowing that May only had Torchic, informed her that she would have trouble as well, since Torchic being a fire-type was also not good against rock-types. Chaz then comes to Ash's rescue, stating that despite Pikachu being weak against rock Pokemon, he knew a move that he could help Pikachu learn that could do well against rock types. Ash, wanting anything that could give him an advantage against Pikachu's weaknesses, gratefully accepted the offer. Max suggested to May that she should get involved as well with this practice so that Torchic could learn the move that was good against rock types, but May declined, simply claiming that she had more important things to do at the moment, like preparing to assist in the contest, and she would just figure something out in the gym battle later. This surprised Max at how carefree May was. However, the true reasoning for May being so carefree was because she still was not actually sure if she wanted to participate in gym battles, and had only agreed to do so because her father and Professor Birch had suggested it, but she didn't even really want to, so she was just trying to avoid anything related to them. So, May, Max, and Brock go into Rustboro Hall to get ready for the contest, while Ash trains alone in the field with Chaz, who sends out his Sentret, and explains that he was going to have his Sentret demonstrate an Iron Tail, which was a Steel-type attack that Pikachu could learn, which was very effective against Rock-type Pokemon, though warned Ash that it would take quite a bit of training to master it. The demonstration then began as Sentret used Iron Tail on a rock, smashing it to pieces, impressing Ash, who declares that he was now ready to start training. So, Chaz ties a small rock to Pikachu's tail, and Ash starts to do push-ups while Pikachu uses only its tail to lift the rock, essentially doing tail push-ups while Ash did real push-ups. Why was Ash doing the push-ups, you may ask? Because that wouldn't strengthen Pikachu's tail at all. Well, it was because Ash felt that it wasn't fair that his Pokemon should have to do a whole bunch of hard work and training while he just fucking stood there and did nothing. So he decided to strengthen himself as well. Although he would of course take time away from his push-ups to encourage Pikachu to keep going whenever he saw that Pikachu was really struggling to lift the rock. Meanwhile, since Jessie was entered into the Pokemon contest, she was reading the Pokemon contest guidebook to learn some tips on how to improve her Pokemon's attacks by making them more stylish and beautiful, as well as just general tips regarding the contest. Meowth and James questioned why Jessie was so interested in Pokemon contests because they were bored out of their fucking mind on anything they heard regarding the contest, leading Jessie to state that she really wanted to win the contest because she wanted to be a winner for a change instead of losing, and if they win, then they could become famous, as most people who won Pokemon contests became relatively famous. James and Meowth were already intrigued by the prospect of getting fame with Jessie, but they were even more intrigued when Jessie stated that if she became famous, then she would have her own fan club who would do anything she asked, including join Team Rocket. So therefore, she could be responsible for recruiting a whole bunch of Team Rocket members, and that way, Giovanni would give Team Rocket a promotion. So not only would she get a whole bunch of money from being famous as a contest person, but she would also get more money from Giovanni. Meowth and James were excited by this, so they declared that they were going to help out Jessie in any way possible to win this contest. Meanwhile, the crowd had gathered in the contest hall with May, Brock, Max, and Janet watching from the crowd, awaiting when they would have to go up. Well, with the exception of Brock, because he wasn't an assistant, but you know what I mean. Anyways, once the crowd had gathered in the seats in front of the stage, the announcer of the contest then came out and introduced the 3 judges of the contest, who happened to be a Nurse Joy and 2 people named Mr. Sukizo and Raul Contesta, specifying that Raul Contesta was the director of the Pokemon Contest Committee, and Mr. Sukizo was the president of the Pokemon Enthusiast Club, which was basically just a Pokemon fan club for people to show off their Pokemon and talk about how awesome they were, and introduced Nurse Joy as Rustboro City's local Nurse Joy, who had come to judge the contest. The announcer then explains the rules of the contest, being that each trainer will have a set amount of time to show off their Pokemon's attacks, and the judges will rate them on a scale of 10, with 10 being the best. Man, finally, Pokemon competitions with time limits, because you know how the gyms are always like, oh yeah, it'll be a 3-on-3 battle with no time limit. Well, then what's the point of specifying that time limits exist? But thankfully, there is actually a use for time limits in certain cases. Anyways, as the announcer kept talking, Brock, May, and Max were ushered into the waiting room with Janet so that Janet could wait for her time to go on stage. Although, from the waiting room, they were able to continue to watch the announcer's speech on TV, and saw that the announcer was now talking about the prize for the winner of the contest being the Rustboro ribbon, and also reveals the concept of the Grand Festival, which was essentially a Pokemon coordinator's main goal, much like how a Pokemon trainer's main goal that was interested in battling, like how their main goal was the Pokemon League, a Pokemon coordinator's main goal was the Grand Festival. Although unlike how battlers needed 8 badges to enter the Pokemon League, coordinators only needed 5 ribbons from 5 different contests to enter the Grand Festival. The announcer then steps off the stage and tells the first trainer to come onto stage, who releases its partner, a Jinx, and the Jinx begins to dance and show off its moves, with May and Max watching from the waiting room. They then saw the trainers with a Persian, Flaffy, and Slugma from earlier step up, and they also saw a trainer with an Elekid hugging it after it did a good job, and they saw Smeargle painting some stuff on the stage to showcase its awesome colors, and they also saw a Poochyena catching a Frisbee very stealthily to show off its quick attack. There was also a Meryl showing off its beautiful water gun. As May and Max watched all this, really impressed, they also saw the judges give all of the contestants relatively high scores. Janet then went into detail on how the judges determined what score to give, explaining that this first round of the contest was known as the appeals round, where the trainers would essentially try to impress the judges by giving a strong first impression with some attacks, and the judges would assign the appropriate level of points based on the level of cooperation between the coordinator and their Pokemon, and the overall beauty of the moves. And adds that the overall winner of the contest would be the person with the most points at the end of all the rounds, explaining that all the points would be added up between all 3 of the judges. May was extremely interested in everything that Janet had told her, and was also interested in all of the Pokemon and the coordinators that she was watching, and all of their teamwork made her realize how awesome Pokemon and their trainers could truly be, and it essentially made her realize that she did in fact like Pokemon after all. Like, you know how she was scared of them in the beginning? Well, now she was feeling more comfortable with them. Meanwhile, back with Ash and Pikachu, Chaz had left Ash with several pink discs, like the ones from the contest that the Poochyena was using, and Ash proceeded to throw these pink discs so that Pikachu could deflect them with his tail to strengthen it and make it harder. Ash then sent out his Taillow to help with the training, as he commanded his Taillow to use Tackle on a tree to cause apples to fall down from the tree, which Pikachu deflected with his tail as well. After this was done, Ash then recalled his Tailo and sent out Trico to assist, as he told Trico to throw its twig at Pikachu, and Pikachu was able to deflect it with his tail as well. Ash then recalled Trico and noticed that Pikachu's tail was finally glowing, signifying that it had learned Iron Tail, and the tail had been powered up. So he thanked Trico and Tailo from inside their Pokeballs for their help, and congratulated Pikachu on his awesome job at deflecting everything. Just then, Ash noticed a video of the contest performances going on, and remembered that he had forgot that the contest was about to start when he was training, so he realized that he was missing it, so he immediately ran back inside the contest hall to watch the concert in person. However, this caused him to miss what was currently being shown on the monitor outside the hall, which was Chaz's performance, which involved Chaz's Venomoth using Psychic to lift a glass tea set without breaking anything, and then using a Confusion to pour tea out from a teapot. By the time Ash had made it inside of Rustboro Hall, he saw that Chaz and his Venomoth had just waved to the audience and stepped off the stage, as the performance was now complete, and all the judges were very fond of it, with Chaz amassing a total of 29.5 points, as he had 2 perfect scores and 1 9.5. Upon seeing this, Ash realized that even Janet and her Beautyfly would have a tough time winning. Ash was disappointed that he had missed Chaz's performance, realizing that it must have been good to get a 29.5. But he was happy, as he was at least able to make it for Janet's performance, as he then saw Janet and her assistants, May and Max, walk out on stage. And Janet immediately sent out her Beautyfly, who started out by using a combination of Morning Sun and Flash, leading May to comment on how beautiful the light from the move was, as it completely filled the room, impressing the judges. Then, it was time for May and Max's job as assistants to be underway, as they threw some pink discs and also some white discs into the air, and Beautyfly used String Shot to break everyone in a beautiful display. To top things off, Janet then orders her Beautyfly to use a combination of Hidden Power and Silver Wind, and this causes a huge glittering powder to shower over May, Max, as well as all the audience, which they were really excited by, since the glitter was so beautiful, and the audience went even more wild when the glitter showered down on Beautyfly and Janet, making them even more beautiful, and Janet's performance then ended with Beautyfly landing in her hand. The judges were so impressed by this that they each gave Janet a perfect score, making Janet the best scorer so far with a perfect 30 points. With her performance done, Janet then steps off the stage and goes back into the waiting room with May and Max, as the audience couldn't stop applauding her, and Janet kept getting congratulations from May and Max in the waiting room, along with Brock and Chaz, as well as Ash, who had made his way into the waiting room. Janet humbly reminded May and Max that her performance wouldn't have been nearly as good without the throwing discs part, so thanked them immensely for their help, as Ash congratulated May and Max on the win as well, because technically it was their win, just like Janet's. While Ash, May, Max, Janet, and Chaz, and Brock were inside the waiting room, it was now time for the last competitors to come out on stage, and they did, being Jessie, under the alias Mademoiselle Jessica. And of course, disguised in a fancy suit, with Meowth and James joining her on stage as her assistants, disguised as well. We couldn't forget about Jessie's Pokemon though, and obviously, she sent out her Survivor to be her contest Pokemon, and she ordered it to use Sacred Fire. However, Survivor simply began sweating, stressed out, as it obviously didn't know Sacred Fire. Jessie realized this, and begins to name some more, such as Blaze Kick, Luster Purge, and Water Pulse, and Poison Sting. But Survivor simply just stood there and shook its head, sweating still, insinuating that it didn't know any of these attacks either. Meowth and James sighed in annoyance, with Meowth complaining that it seemed like Survivor was pretty limited in terms of attacks, and James added that the situation wasn't any better, since the Survivor seemed to have stage fright due to the sweating it was experiencing, even though the sweating was both due to the fact that it didn't want to make Jessie angry and the stage fright. Jessie was obviously frustrated at the Survivor failing to use any attacks, and she got even more frustrated as Wobbuffet forcibly popped out of its Pokeball, forcing her to recall it. She realized that she couldn't afford to mess up anymore, as she turned around so that none of the judges could see her, and looked through the guidebook to find some more attacks, such as Dragon Claw, Psywave, and Psybeam, but Survivor didn't know any of these attacks either, and it just caused Survivor to sweat even more. Due to Survivor's terrible performance, the crowd was beginning to boo, as they were getting bored and angry, as were the judges, as they were used to, good performances, so any bad performances they just couldn't tolerate, and they began to even get embarrassed on Jessie's behalf, at how bad it was. Meowth, being Jessie's assistant, suggested that she think of an attack that Survivor could use quick, reminding her that there was at least one attack that Survivor could use for sure, and it was better to use some attack than no attack. So, Jessie called for Survivor to use its only attack, Poison Tail. Survivor finally stopped sweating and gets excited to actually be able to do something, but it got so excited that it didn't watch where it swung its tail, and ended up hitting Jessie with the Poison Sting, sending her flying up onto the roof, and out of the contest hall, leaving James and Meowth alone with Survivor. And the judges, finding this stupid, declared that Jessie got 0 points, and scolded her for making them bored, as the announcer apologized on Jessie's behalf for how bad the performance was. As for Ash and the gang's reaction to Jessie's terrible performance, Max and May questioned how the fuck someone could get a total score of 0 out of 30, shocked that someone could be so bad. With Ash, Brock, Chaz, and Janet echoing this sentiment, the announcer then tries to shrug off Jessie's performance, trying to pretend that it didn't happen, as he then reveals the 4 highest scoring coordinators moving on to the final round, the battle round. well, it wasn't technically the finals, but the semifinals, as the 4 trainers would face another trainer, and then the top 2 from there would move on to the finals. Anyways, as a leaderboard popped up, it revealed 4 semifinalists included Janet and Chaz, along with 2 other trainers. And Janet and Chaz weren't facing each other in this round. They were each facing one of the other random trainers. So they proceeded to wish each other luck, wanting to face each other in the finals. As Janet and Chaz raised their arms in determination, May, due to being Janet's assistant, obviously vouched her support for Janet and her Beautyfly, believing that they would easily win, while Max, despite being an assistant as well, took a less biased view, just happy to get to witness some awesome battles, even if they weren't really battles, but rather just move performances. Anyways, in the forest, Jessie was crying, immensely sad about her loss, as she was hugging her Survivor, because she saw that her Survivor was sad too, clearly not intending to hit Jessie, just doing so because it was so thrilled to finally use an attack, and Jessie thanked it for doing its best even with its stage fright and its lack of actual attacks, also complimenting the strength of Survivor's Poison Tail despite it hitting her earlier. James and Meowth, as well as Wobbuffet, who forcibly popped out of his Pokeball again, were shocked that Jessie wasn't extremely mad at the Survivor for losing the contest, leading Jessie to respond that she wasn't mad at her Survivor because she knew that it felt bad as well, and also wasn't that distraught over losing because she had a plan. Meowth stated that he had a plan as well, realizing that even though Jessie had lost, they could still get a W for the day by stealing all of the Pokemon from the contest, and therefore they could use all the Pokemon and their beautiful attacks to hopefully impress Giovanni. Jessie agreed with Meowth's plan, stating that that's the exact plan that she had come up with, and she was about to mention it. So with that, Team Rocket decided that they were gonna sneak back into the contest hall and steal all the contest Pokemon, as revenge for Jessie and Survivor's loss. Although, Jessie did make one tweak to the plan, being that she suggested that they merely just steal the winner's Pokemon, since they would clearly be the best out of the crop anyways, and it would be easier for them to steal one, as opposed to them all. Meanwhile, back in the Rustboro Hall, it was now time for the finals, as Janet and Chaz had easily swept through their semi-final opponents and were now facing each other, just as they hoped. Because it was the finals, the goal was to impress the judges in 5 minutes. That's right, there was an actual time limit, once again. Yay! Right before the match began, the announcer reminded the audience that the winner of this match would win the entire contest, and therefore win the ribbon. Ash and Max were practically jumping out of their seat in excitement, just waiting for someone to win, not really caring who it was, while May, on the other hand, was rooting for Janet, and particularly her Beautyfly, as she had taken a liking to it. As for Brock, he was like Ash and Max, in the fact that he just thought the match was going to be fun to watch. He didn't really care who won. The timer then started as 5 minutes began counting down, and the match began with Venomoth starting with Stun Spore, with Beautyfly using a Stun Spore of its own. This allowed both Janet and Chaz to gain the same amount of points, since they had used the same attack. Although, as the judges watched, they eventually gave Janet a bit more points because her Stun Spore was more accurate, hitting the Venomoth more, as opposed to Venomoth's, which kind of went all over the place. Janet then gets even more points as she has Beautyfly use Gust to blow away Venomoth's Stun Spore entirely. Ash and May questioned how the Gust was viewed as a more beautiful attack as opposed to a Stun Spore, leading Max to explain that the reason why Janet got points for her Gust wasn't because it was more beautiful, but because it blew away the Stun Spore, explaining that the judges evaluated more than just the attack itself and how beautiful it was, but also how an attack was able to stop another Pokemon's attack, and how the Pokemon being attacked was able to defend itself. So, not only had Janet gained points for blowing away Venomoth's Stun Spore, but Chaz had lost points due to Venomoth being attacked. So, basically, how the contest final battle rounds worked was trainers could gain points if they did something good, and then they would lose points if they did something bad. Hearing Max's explanation, May, Ash, and Brock came to the conclusion that, essentially, a goal of a trainer in the final round was to increase their points and also decrease their opponent's points by not only using nice-looking attacks, but using attacks that were able to cancel out their opponent's attacks. Because if your opponent's attacks were stopped, then they obviously couldn't gain any points for them. Ash commented how trainers having to stop attacks from hitting their Pokemon was similar to a regular battle, although Brock and May were against this, as they stated that this type of contest battling was way different, since the goal wasn't to knock out your opponent's Pokemon. May quickly ordered Ash and Brock to stop talking to her, as she wanted to focus on the match, which was still well underway, as Beautyfly used a well-executed hidden power to hit Venomoth, despite Venomoth trying to fly away, because the hidden power was just so good. And it was also backed by an Absorb attack as well, and due to Absorb sucking out energy, this was what caused Venomoth to not be able to fly away fast enough. Venomoth then retaliated with an attack of its own to try and make up for the points that Janet had got, as it used a Psybeam, which hit Beautyfly so hard that it was knocked to the ground, causing Chaz to gain a whole bunch of points as a result. However, Beautyfly was able to heal itself up using a Morning Sun, as the beautiful rays of sun sprayed everywhere, and this allowed Beautyfly to fly back up into the air, while the audience was still amazed by the beautiful light from it. Fortunately for Janet, this beautiful display of a Morning Sun caused her to gain a whole bunch of points, and it also left May more impressed than anyone else in the audience, and it really made her wish that she could have entered this contest herself and battled just like Janet and her Beautyfly. Anyways, the battle quickly resumed as both Pokemon charged at each other, with Venomoth using a Psybeam and Beautyfly using a hidden power absorb combination again, and these attacks all collided, creating a huge explosion in the middle of the battlefield. The time limit was about to go out, with there being less than a minute left, so Janet and Chaz ordered their Pokemon to use Flash and confusion, respectively, and the judges quickly added these attacks to their scores so that they could come up with a final score as the time then ran out, leading the announcer to call the audience's attention to the scoreboard, which revealed that by the end of the battle, Janet had just beaten Chaz, having just barely more points, meaning that Janet was officially declared the winner along with her Beautyfly, causing Ash and the gang to cheer and congratulate Janet from the crowd. And they also congratulated Beautyfly as well, as Beautyfly landed on her hand, leading Janet to congratulate her Beautyfly as well. And then Chaz, being the good sport and friend to Janet that he was, walked up to her and congratulated her as well, stating that her and Beautyfly did an awesome job. And Janet congratulated Chaz on his efforts as well. But this wholesome moment was then interrupted as Team Rocket then showed up, dressed in tuxedo disguises, and compliment Janet's Beautyfly, telling it it did a fantastic job. The announcer was ticked off at Jesse and James' sudden appearance, stating that he was just about to give out the ribbon as a reward, and questioned what the fuck they were doing, leading Jesse to take the microphone from the announcer that the announcer was holding, and claim that her and James were from the Rustboro Congratulatory Committee or some shit, and they had come to personally congratulate Janet on her win, as they proceeded to give a victory gift of their own to Janet, being a bouquet of roses. Obviously, though, Team Rocket weren't part of the congratulatory committee, and the roses were just part of their plan to capture the Beautyfly, since Janet was the winner of the contest, and they said they were going to capture the winner's Pokemon. So, suddenly, as Janet took the flowers, and Chaz observed them, wishing that he got flowers that were just as beautiful, it was revealed that there was a hidden smoke bomb inside the flowers that Meowth had set to go off right at the time that Janet took the flowers. So, the smoke bomb went off, creating a huge blast of smoke, which blinded Janet, allowing Jesse and James to steal Beautyfly and put it inside of a bug-catching net. However, since Chaz was also on stage and distracted by the smoke as well, especially since he had saw the smoke bomb inside the flowers and tried to hit the flowers away from Janet, this meant that he was extremely close up to her, allowing Jesse and James to take his Venomoth as well and put it inside another bug-catching net. So basically, when the smoke finally cleared, Team Rocket threw off their disguises and did their motto, happily exclaiming that they had stolen both the winner's Beautyfly and the runner-up's Venomoth. Upon seeing Team Rocket, May, Max, Brock, and Ash immediately stood up from their seats in the stands, and May angrily demanded to know what Team Rocket was planning to do with Venomoth and Beautyfly, and why they needed them, with Jessie stating that she planned to actually use the Venomoth and Beautyfly to win contests of her own, so that she could become famous, and all that shit that she said earlier. But now she was just going to steal other people's Pokemon to do it, instead of using her own. However, Chaz and Janet jumped in and claimed that they would do everything in their power to get their Pokemon back, and they wouldn't let Team Rocket escape, and were about to go up to Team Rocket to take the bug nets out of their hands, leading Jessie to send out Seviper to defend her. Ash realized that he would have to take action, since Janet and Chaz couldn't, since they didn't have any Pokemon left with them currently to fight Seviper, so he told Pikachu to use Iron Tail, much to everyone's shock, because they didn't know that Pikachu could use Iron Tail yet. Chaz especially doubted that Pikachu could use Iron Tail, claiming that there was no way it had enough practice yet, and this was actually proved right, as Pikachu's tail did begin to glow, but it appeared that Pikachu hadn't quite mastered the Iron Tail yet, as the glow quickly faded out, so Pikachu couldn't even fully use Iron Tail, and couldn't even hit Seviper before the tail had stopped glowing. Iron Tail's failure led Ash to get embarrassed, although he was at first confused as to why Iron Tail didn't work, leading Chaz, who was also confused, because he really thought for a second that maybe Ash did have it under control, to clarify that there was no way Pikachu could have learned it yet, and this just made Ash even more ashamed, and he was so distracted that he couldn't tell Pikachu to do anything, as Seviper went in to use Poison Tail on Pikachu. However, May was ready to step in now to protect Pikachu, as she sent out her Torchic and had it use Tackle to hit the Seviper away from Pikachu, and with Seviper down, Torchic then used Ember to cut open the nets that were holding Venomoth and Beautyfly hostage, setting them free. Wow, Torchic was able to actually do shit. No way. Anyways, with Beautyfly and Venomoth now free, Janet and Chaz declared that they should finish off Team Rocket as revenge for Team Rocket trying to steal Venomoth and Beautyfly, and had both Venomoth and Beautyfly use a combination of both Gust and Whirlwind to send Team Rocket blasting off out of Rustboro Hall. With Team Rocket gone, the award ceremony for Janet could now begin, as the announcer and Mr. Contesta proudly presented Janet with the prestigious Rustboro ribbon, which was Janet's third contest ribbon overall. May was obviously intrigued to see the ribbon, and asked to see it, and Janet obliged, showing it to Ash and the gang. May was of course enamored by the beauty of the ribbon, more so than anyone else, because she just loved the ribbon so much, and declared that, being motivated by Janet's performance and this ribbon, that she was going to definitely enter a contest of her own one day, and she was going to win her own ribbon. However, Max still thought that May should focus primarily on her gym battle, suggesting that Ash got training and she didn't, so she should really focus on training for a gym battle, although May simply just shrugged off Max's comment as best she could, still not wanting to reveal that she didn't really care about gym battles anymore. Chaz then wished Ash good luck in his gym battle in Rustboro, stating that as long as he and Pikachu continued to practice the Iron Tail, they would eventually fully master it, and Ash agreed, hoping that Chaz was right, as he promised to do everything he could to master Pikachu's Iron Tail. The episode then ends with May, Ash, Max, and Brock saying goodbye to Janet and Chaz as they all leave the Rustboro Hall, but not before Janet let May personally hold her ribbon so that she could feel what it felt like to have a glorious ribbon from a contest inside her hand, essentially acting as Janet's way of wishing May good luck. and this just motivated May even more to pursue contests, while Ash was motivated to pursue his gym battle, determined to master the Iron Tail.